Rogelio Horta, yeah, he's been with us for a while now. What, 15 years?
Yes.
Yeah, and he's our primary safety specialist. He's our primary for all that is hazmat, HAZWOPER related, hence why he's here today. And as your slide tells you, he has over 20 years of hands-on experience in OSHA, or occupational health and safety. Also has extensive knowledge in all the applicable regulations, EPA record. He doesn't like me talking about him. He's trying to hurry me up. And also, he just recently got his, not recently, but got his CHST about a year ago. 2 years ago now? A year ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. That's huge in the construction industry, by the way. And he's also, as your slide tells you, is an authorized OSHA outreach trainer for construction industry.
So, good morning, everyone. As Eric mentioned, my name is Roy Horta. It's actually Rogelio Horta, but for most people, probably Roy will be a lot easier. So this webinar is, like Eric mentioned, is very short. It's just about an hour long, and it's very basic. So this is at the awareness level. And so it's just a quick overview of the requirements of PSM. So so basically what we're going to cover is the 14 elements of the process safety management, and which is actually contained on the on 29 CFR 1910-119, and it covers a lot of different industries. So like I said, we're not going to be specific of industry. We're just going to be going to the federal 14 elements. And if you need any more help after that, it will be more. We're here for you. We can actually customize training for you guys. So before I begin with this, I would like to tell you guys about some of the reasons why why OSHA decided that they needed to come out with this particular type of regulation, and that is a very significant incidents that happened in the past. And as I'm talking right now with you guys, I'm actually looking, because I can remember the exact date of one that happened while I was still living in Mexico. And actually I found that it was November 1984. There was a big accident very close to the little place that I used to live in, Mexico City. I used to live at the outskirts of Mexico City, and there was a refinery. So if you're familiar with Mexican Petroleum Company, Pemex, they had a really bad escape of liquid petroleum gas at night, and it killed everybody on the place. The place used to be called San Juanico. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night thinking it was an earthquake. And I was several miles away from when this happened. That actually killed everybody in their sleep. So a lot of people, they just burned them to death. So the next morning when we watched the news, it was just horrifying. And I remember waking up and looking at the distance and actually noticed the really bright light that you could see from far, that we thought it was something else, and then later on we found out it was actually an explosion. But also in 1985 in India, we also had another incident called not our incident, but it actually happened to one of our companies from the United States, Union Carbide, at a very large amount of isobutyl isocyanate that actually got released into the community, and it caused the death of over 20,000 people. So all these things were of concern to us, because even though these things were happening somewhere else in the world, the possibility of those things happening to us, they were there. So we decided to do something about it. So the government sit down and they said, well, we need to make sure we prevent things like this. Also, 1989, I have a list of different accidents happening here. There's Bhopal, India, and then we have some happening in Cincinnati, Ohio, from BSF. It caused a lot of injuries. So there's a lot of different situations, but those are the most that I actually recall right now. And so we decided we got to do something about it. So this has happened someplace else, and I know we as a society, we're not really proactive. We're always reactive. We're just waiting, and when something happened, then we actually spring into action. So what is it we did? Well, we require companies to actually come out with a process safety management. We want to make sure that they know the process, that they make sure that the process is actually working, and they turn this process into a continuous improvement activity. Not something that just, okay, so we did it, we put the program together, we're done. So let's get it over with. So on our first, and I mean, this is slide, we have the 14 elements, as you can see, and we're going to try to cover them as much as we can in an hour. And this is your regulation. We talk about it a little bit. And it's an interesting regulation. You really have to read it, and then also you have to read the California one. So, and the most important part is that I need to figure out if I'm actually, this applied to me as a company. So, am I actually one of the facilities has to be covered? Well, if you're a refinery, you probably are, right? So, if you're a manufacturer of a large amount of very toxic chemicals, yes, you are. So if this is applied to you, then you have to make sure that you follow it. Now, most people, they already have a PSM. They're doing a great job, but like I said, this is a continuous improvement. So if you don't have enough staff, if you're not really keeping an eye on the training part of the mechanical integrity and things like that, actually, they can actually cause a catastrophe. So that is a problem. So that's the idea of this presentation, is to just give you a little refresher, a little review on how to comply with this. Now, what I learned a long time ago while working for different plating companies is one of the things where you can reduce the amount of regulation in your facility is to actually get rid of the problems. So as always in safety, you always try to eliminate a hazard, and when it's not possible, then you do something else. But at this point, how can I actually get out of this particular regulation? Well, we can actually try to reduce our inventories of really hazardous materials on site. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. Actually, companies will actually keep the inventory for you someplace else. Now, with some industries, it's impossible because you're the one that create the inventory yourself. So it will be almost impossible to do it. But if there's a possibility, there's always possibility of, to store your chemicals someplace else. There's companies do that for you, or just order a little bit at a time. Instead of ordering 2,000 gallons of a particular chemical, you might want to break down those shipments and every 2 weeks, or depending on your need, you can actually do that. Inventory control is, like I said, is one of the biggest problems, and there's a lot of companies that actually will do it for a year if you do a little research. Also, location of the chemicals, right? Where do I position it? What's the total quantities? What are the threshold quantities? So what is that actually triggers the requirement? So let's move them around. Let's put them in different places, segregate it, not everything in one place. It's a lot of different techniques, but it is up to you. It's up to what you're trying to accomplish and what you wanted to do. But yeah, most people will love to get out of these regulations. Some companies do. Some people, they just can't, so they have to comply. So another important part is the employees' participation. So they need to be in there. They have to have the roles. What are they? Are they inspectors? What type of work they do? What's their function within the program? And so I have to make sure that they really understand what they're doing. I want to make sure that they actually really count for those chemicals, that they look at the pipes as they're walking around, that they look at containers, that they look at labels, that actually they are actively participating on the process. It's really simple to just assign and train someone, but the big issue is, can we count on them doing what they're actually being trained to do? And that's like I said, we do training. We do a lot of training here. And as I go out and I teach, I always find it's really, really hard to get people to do what they were supposed to do. So employee participation, it starts from the top of your company. You start with the president of the company or the general manager, and it trickles down. It has to trickle down to the frontline supervisor, the frontline workers. It's a really, really complex concept because you're talking about behavior modification, and modifying people's behavior takes a long, long time, but it's a possibility. It's always possible. We had a really good, we got success actually modifying people look at the behavior towards safety, which is actually really interesting. spent thousands of hours training, and we actually will be able to actually do that. So, so like an EHS, an OSHA inspector or a certified safety and health official, which is your OSHA inspector, will attempt to verify participation by interviewing employees at random. So it's important that you actually teach them how to do this for real, not just to say anything because they have to say it, it's because they actually do it because they have to do it. And so it's really important. You can do consultation. Some people actually use OSHA consulting services to do their entire walkthrough. Some people get really nervous about that stuff, but some people do. Some people do. I've seen it done. If you don't, you can use a company that's us. But the size of the magnitude of some of these inspections are all related to what you actually want them to see. They won't look at everything in your facilities. That you hire a private company, it's a lot different because they can roam around and look at everything you have.
It's pretty brave to come on your site and say, hey, come out. You got to be really on top.
But they're good. They're good consultant. Yeah. So process safety information. Where do I get the most information on the chemicals that I have on site? You know, like always safety data sheets. I love safety data sheets. I think this is one of the most important documents you can use. But also you have to use something more than that. In my classes, normally I teach people to read not just one source of information, a safety data sheet, but actually get them to use at least as a minimum 3 different sources of information. So a lot of stuff out there that is free for the taking. You can go directly to the NIOSH website, and you can actually download PDF for the NIOSH Pocket Guide. You can actually download different programs that will have enough information, like WISER, W-I-S-E-R, which is the Wireless Information System for Emergency Responders. You can also use Cameo chemicals, either on your apps, on your phone, or your computers. It will give you a little bit more information. It will complement, it will complement what you learn from the SDSs. And like I said, SDSs is supposed to be chemical specific, but they're not the ultimate document. You need to do a little more than that. So your piping and instrumentation diagrams, those are important. They have to be current. You have to know exactly where it's flowing from where to where and what they're actually carrying. I got to make sure that I have all that information, the type of materials of construction, especially that, because I want to know if that actually will survive a certain amount of how many years and the type of chemicals that will actually be flowing through. We had an issue, I'll say about 20 years ago. We were running this machine that we bought from Italy, and it was supposed to run with cupric chloride. And so it was basically copper sulfate, and we had some hydrochloric acid to it. And it was an etching machine from Italy, and it was a great piece of equipment, continuous flow. And one day the machine started leaking about 2 months after we bought it, and then we started looking around the machine and it started actually leaking out, and we couldn't figure out why. So we had to empty it, take them apart, look inside the machine, and what we saw was something really, really interesting, that we got these titanium bolts, and they were actually being destroyed by the chemical itself because there was a little bit too much of iron in the concentration of the hydrochloric acid, and that was actually affecting the titanium and also the type of seals that we have. So we had to switch everything. We had to put Biton in it. So it was interesting. So if that can happen to a little machine that actually sits on the floor, just imagine what they can happen to a pipe and the covering of the pipe and the insulation of the pipe. And you can actually, if you go to the chemical safety board, you actually see a lot of instances where the equipment actually fails. So we're going to go through that a little more in the next few slides. So so you have to have, like I said, I mentioned earlier, employee participation, which is a requirement, and process hazard analysis and revalidations, process hazard analysis in general. So it's always good to audit these things. I want to make sure that you have them, right? So OSHA has different formats for this. You can actually go directly to their website. there's also programs out there where you can do that, or you can hire people like us to actually go and do it for you. We can actually walk around, take pictures, videos. We can actually, save you the time. But nowadays with technology, it's a lot simpler. But you also have to have somebody that's actually knowledgeable. So one of the biggest deficiencies sometimes when we actually go and we actually provide a process hazard analysis is that we go after something happened. So we're never there before something actually happens. We're almost always there when actually this is already when something already occurred. Something was broken, something was leaking, somebody got injured, they got busted by OSHA, they got busted by DOT or EPA, or something happened there. So so the concept is not to wait that long, is to actually make sure that actually they're current, and most important is actually to review them. Mm-hmm. So now a lot of these things, especially the process hazard analysis, we go and we look at the obvious. So we walk around and we see something and we're like, oh, okay, so maybe this is wrong. And then we take a picture, we take measurements, we look at the process itself. But sometimes, and I know, and sometimes I do not advocate this, but in this particular case, and in some of the classes, I don't advocate the what if. But sometimes in these cases, especially on this process hazard analysis for this type of chemicals, I always recommend a what if. Just look around and say, okay, what if that pipe will not withstand the weight? What if that thing falls on top? Just a little exercise, and and what if something will happen? You never know. You never know. And then also there's a lot of different programs that you can actually use to figure it out. Failure of equipment, catastrophic events, movement of this particular chemicals, where are they going, how they're going to travel through the ground or through the air. And so there's a lot out there, but it has to be done. Somebody has to do it. So you have to have standard operating procedures. How many times I go to different companies and I ask for their standard operating procedures, and the first thing they said, what's that? And I said, what do you mean what's that? I said, well, maybe work instructions. No. What about your IIPP here in California? You have anything like that? I said, yeah, I think we did. I think I saw in 1996, and when they hired me, I haven't seen it since then. So, well, not a good idea. So you have to have a standard operating procedure. Even though we're a training company, we actually do have a standard operating procedures. We got a lot of those things for everything, even to make you sign in at the beginning of a class. So we have a procedure, how it's supposed to be done. So you can do those things together. You can actually create your hazard analysis and actually create a standard operating procedure. So if you already have ISO, you're already at ISO 9001 or any type of ISO 9000, you already have most of that. So all you have to do is just go back, and lots of places with ISO 9000 or 14,000, 1400, you can actually you can use the documentation that is already there, so you don't have to duplicate what you do. So going back to employee training, this is one of the most important parts of training. We see there's a lot of efficiency of different programs, and some of them are. And one of the most important ones is the identity of the employee. Do I have to use a title? Do I have to? Yeah, sometimes titles are okay, but I need to know exactly who's in charge of what, who was actually got trained on what. So I have to know the person's name, right? So if it's not in writing, if they never sign, it never happened. So date of training. When did this happen? A year ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago? When did this happen? Date of training. And how do I verify that an employee understood training? This is one of the hardest and the toughest part of anything, is actually to figure it out if somebody understood training. And the worst part of this is that if you have a mixed group of people with different languages, How do we really get it how do we know that they really understood? How do we actually gauge this? And you know what? It's a really tough thing to do, but OSHA, that's what OSHA wants. Is want to make sure that you understand, regardless of language, regardless of knowledge, you have to make sure that they actually understand. So how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, there's different ways to do it. One of them is, some people go like, oh, you'll just give them a test. Well, I have students that are amazing at doing tests, and then we go out and do a practical, they don't remember a thing. They're really good at guessing. You had a multiple choice test, you have 25% chance of getting it. You got 4 questions, 25% chance. So, so how do we do that? I will recommend you find and hire a professional. I know a lot of people try to teach, a lot of people try to do this, and it's not a simple task. So you need somebody with enough knowledge and enough idea of what training is all about, so they can actually get to them. And that one that's for sure, it's another area where we can actually help you out. We have bilingual trainers too, and so we can help you in anything that you want. We're at a try and prove techniques to make sure that they understand. So also you have a requirement of refresher training. This one says actually that the minimum it has to be done every 3 years, and more often if necessary to each employee involved in operating process. The recommendation, once a year. And 3 years is too long. People forget. Repetition actually makes it a habit. So the more you go over, the more you review, the more you do it, the knowledge will actually increase, and people will actually be less prompt to actually make mistakes. So contractors. Oh my God, contractors. I love contractors. I go to so many different places, and one of the biggest issues with contractors is, and I hear this from a lot of different people, they have insurance, and they're bonded, and they know what they're doing. That's what they're contractors. That's what we hire them. Well, yes and no, right? So who's ultimately responsible for the contractor? Well, you are. Your contractor is you're responsible for them. So they have to do exactly the same that you do. They have to have a process that is actually exactly like yours, or they have to follow your program. So it has to be equal or greater than yours, so they can actually comply with the regs. So what do I need to get from them? Well, I need to make sure that their employees are trained. So how do I know that? Well, they got to show you records of training. Make sure they understand safety. So in a lot of places, what they do is they require certain cards, like the OSHA 10s and the 30s. They require them to be CHSTs, so SSTs. So a lot of different things are required depending on the complexity of the job and the hazard of the job. But we have to, so now if we are employees, we have to make sure that they understand and they're safe. Guess what we need to do with our contractors? We have to do exactly the same. There's no difference. So always remember that. Your pre-startup safety review, it's another requirement. You get there, you got to check, you got to make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be, that review any change or modifications, make sure the stuff is going to start the way it's supposed to start. Make sure that the valve is going to turn in the way it's supposed to be. Make sure that the fume scrubbers are going to kick in when they need to kick in. Just make sure that everything is there before you actually flip the switch. You have to make sure that this is happening. Because many times on the pre-startup and on the startup is when you start going like, oh my God, we forgot to put this gasket. Oh my God, we forgot to do something else. I've seen it. I've been part of processes where we actually have made huge mistakes in the past. And it costs a lot of money. Thank God nobody ever got injured, but the cost was very bad, and it took them another 3 days to actually get back into the system. Mechanical integrity, pressure vessels, right? They need to be tested. Storage tanks, they need to be tested. You have to make sure that everything is actually tested by an engineer. Make sure that everything actually passes the like in this particular case, they're pressure testing for the pressure vessels, the integrity of the tanks, the double containment, the everything that is necessary to keep this working, the release and vent systems, the emergency shutdown systems, any type of controls, sensors, alarms, interlocks, the piping system, including the valves and everything that I need to actually move, pumps, anything like that. They have to be actually functional, and they have to be in good working order. So so especially if your emergency shutdowns. How many times I actually visited a company just recently, and I was walking around, and they asked me, it was something completely unrelated. So I'm doing a small inspection. So I'm actually looking at a table saw. And so as I walking around with the table saw, just looking at the problem with the table saw, when I was about to leave, I started walking around and I noticed something. So I got a little incident, and the person almost their shirt got actually caught up into the system, and then the person moved away. And I said, how do you shut this off? And he says, well, it's very old equipment, and we don't have it, so we have to actually unplug it. And so what is the plug? Well, the plug's on the other side of the room, and so you actually have to follow just to add insult to injury, the extension cord. And I said, well, just disconnect the extension cord. And he says, yeah, you're right. And he said, but it's something else that we can do. And he said, yes, retrofit the equipment and get somebody else to get new equipment. But yeah, that's something that's simple. Especially emergency shutdowns are one of the things that you have to have for everything. And there's sometimes in some places the equipment is so old that we came out with ideas to actually create emergency shutdown that they're not really try and test. And so you got to be very careful. So all these is a list that you can see on the screen. You can actually see, some of the stuff has to be tested. And welding. This is another one. It's an important one. There's actually one of the biggest problems with. I'm sorry that I'm laughing, but one of the biggest issues with hot work is the concept of the fire watch. So you have to have a fire watch with you, right? So you keep a guy in there. They finish welding, bracing, doing whatever they're doing, and then you got to keep the guy. The fire watch has to stay there for a while, 30 minutes, and make sure that there's nothing else that will ignite. The surfaces might feel hot. A piece of paper might flow in. Something happened. You never know. And what you always see in every single place that I go to and I teach classes or that I do inspection is both of them, they leave at the same time. And then you see them walking around and stepping on embers, and you see them walking around removing the stuff and trying to make sure that everything's okay so that both of them can go out together to lunch. And every time I talk to them and I ask the same question, it's like, hey man, like we work together and just want to have lunch because I'm really hungry. So if I start 30 more minutes, I might faint. I said, well, maybe you need to plan your lunches and your work together. But yeah, this is one of the biggest ones, and a lot of places they don't have the hot work permits. Some of the places you never see a fire extinguisher next to them. And some of these places you see a lot of combustible material around. Even sometimes the surfaces where they're working, the surfaces they're not supposed to be in there because they actually can ignite easily. So this one is a really, really issue that I've seen, and I've seen it a lot. And I've seen actually people bracing with just a glove and just a piece of glass, not even a mask. So in some processes, people are like they do a lot of shortcuts. I'm not saying you guys, but most certain places that I go and I teach or places that I inspect, you can tell why they're in trouble. So we touched a little bit about this at the beginning of the presentation, but raw materials change to substitution. This is the core of safety. How do we make something safer? Well, we get rid of the problem. We just change it, get something else. But this is sometimes it's not as simple as it looks. Sometimes you need the chemical. The chemical has to be there. But yeah, anything you can do to do that to improve the safety. your PSIs, your mechanical integrity, all these things, I have to make sure that everything is actually managed and changed properly. So everything goes well, nothing happened, but one day, boom, something happened. Maybe not a full accident, maybe a near miss. Maybe you hit a pipe with a forklift, with a vehicle, maybe with a tool. A tool fell into a pump. You hit something you're not supposed to. You broke something that you're not supposed to break. And so what I need to do? So I need to investigate every single incident, including near misses. This is one of the most important ones. The big problem with incident investigation is that when you do that, most people actually will have issues. So they'll see as you are trying to get someone. Oh, I know what they're doing. They're trying to get me. They're trying to find somebody to blame. And so it's one thing when you do this, it's a requirement, so you have to do it. When you do this, you make sure that you actually make them understand this is not about trying to find somebody to blame. This is important because you want to make sure that nobody actually gets injured again, or nobody gets injured at all. So the incident investigation is actually a way to improve your safety. It's a measure to improve what you do in a safe manner. So the requirement for this is you got to retain your reports for 5 years. It has to begin within 48 hours of the incident or the near miss, right? So who can do this? Again, always look at professionals. So either you bring somebody from the outside or you do it yourself, but you have to be trained to do it. You cannot just pick up a couple of people and say, let's try to figure out what happened. So it has to be done some way. So you got to follow a system. You have to make sure you understand the process, and you have to create a report at the end, like telling me exactly what is it I need, what's the conclusion of my findings, and what are the recommendations. It's not just we find out that somebody dropped this. Yeah, but why did you drop it? Why? How can we actually prevent this from happening again? So did it change? Yeah, I'm sorry. So emergency plan and response is another one that's it's really big. Most refineries have their own fire team inside. Some people also use their team inside plus the fire department. Some people hire companies that actually they're specializing on this. There's tons of them. I know several of them, but there are a lot of them that actually they can do that. Another one that's really important, your information technology, disaster recovery plan. Where are your files actually located at? Are they still on paper? Most places actually they move away from paper, and most of the stuff is actually their system is redundant. So you have them maybe on paper, you have them on a local hard drive, and then you have them on the cloud. So that's something that we do. We actually keep most of our stuff on the cloud, and also we do a little backup in the hard drive. So we keep this thing. So it's really important you actually have everything that you need: passwords, to access the different functions on their facilities. A business continuity plan. That's another one that's really important. So what happens if something goes pretty bad? So are we shutting down the whole place? How fast are we going to get it back to get everybody back to work? So it's important that you actually you figure that out. Security, how we're going to keep everybody from lurking eyes, going in and trying to figure out what happened. One of the most important ones is communications and public relations. It's you need to have somebody either internally or a firm that when something really bad happens, especially in a very large company, is that somebody actually stand in front of them and tell them and say, hey, don't worry about it, nothing happened, and whatever happened, we'll let you know when we get a chance. We're going to collect all the information. You got to teach people not to talk to reporters. You got to teach people to actually keep to themselves and let the professionals handle these things. And employee assistance in case somebody gets injured or something really bad happened. Explosions actually shake up people really, really bad. I was involved in an accident several years back while working for a emergency response company, and it's pretty stressing. And I remember it took me several years to actually be able to sleep properly because there was a fatality, and And sometimes you wonder why those things happen, and then if you were at fault. So it's important you actually look at always have some sort of employee assistant, somebody that they can talk to. Compliance audits, audit protocol ahead of time. What is it I'm actually looking at? How we're going to do this? Where are we going to start? It's going to be just documentation. It's going to be a physical audit. So that's the most important. So what is the scope of the audit? Is just mechanical integrity? Is this just paperwork, or is everything, or employee training? So what is it we do when we find is that we find something that needs to be corrected? Maybe a faulty piece of equipment. Something that it has to be done immediately. Are we going to be able to do it? Are we going to be able to? We're going to have the money to do it. It's something that's actually allocated for us to actually do it. So so it's important that you take all those things into consideration. The most important, like always, if it's not in writing, it never happens. So prepare a report for management. Let them know exactly what's going on. Let them know ahead of time. It says, you know what, it's coming, and you're looking at a big expenses, or this is not that bad or it's good. Trade secrets is another one. It's a big one. The trade secret is always a big issue with everybody. So I have to have that information ready. So there's specific requirements on how to provide that information, and that's something you need to actually work with, something you need to look around and see how important it is to protect certain things, and who's going to be responsible to provide this information in case of an accident or something bad happen. So make sure that you understand who's going to see what and how you're going to provide this information, just to make sure you are covering on all your bases. So these are the 14 basic elements of your PSM, and so I don't know if you have any questions. I know it's, like I said, this is very brief. This is just an awareness level. If actually we expand on this, we'll actually spend several days just going over every one of them. So, but something that I really want to emphasize before we go back to Eric is the simple elements. Employee participation. It's really important. You need to get these people to get on it. Your employees have to be part of them. So it has to be somebody that really wants to do it. It's not you know what, I'm going to choose this kid because he has to be very bright. Yeah, he might be, but maybe his heart is not there. He's not dedicated enough for it. So employee participation, I need to sell it to them. I need to get them to be part of them. And then once you get them, training. Get effective training. Not all training is the same. All training, there's different companies that do this, including us, and believe me, I've seen it, and it's not because it's my company, but we have very effective methods of to make sure that people actually understand what they're doing. Training, it's vital, it's really important, it's a requirement. Hard work, make sure everybody follows the procedure. Your incident investigations, make sure they are actually done properly. If you still lacking of, like proper understanding of incident investigation, we're here for you. We can train you. We can do a trainer for incident investigation if you want. We can actually train you. Emergency response, I teach every single one of the specialties on emergency response. Incident commanders, the 40 hours, the 24, just name it. I can do it. We can do it actually both in English or Spanish, and so we're capable to take care of your needs. Compliance audits, we can actually help you out with that too. We got a team of professionals that can actually help you out with that. And so with that in mind, just remember always, you're not alone. And if you feel like you really need help, that's what we're here for. This is what we do. This is what we are known for, is to actually not just teach, but actually help our customers. So